O'Hara, the youngest, and from one of the youngest ladies to one of the most experienced, Leslie Watson, almost a compulsive marathon runner. She's been the best Scotswoman for the last 2 years. In fact, she's been second in each of the last 2 years. No doubt looking to go one better this year. She's a phenomenal marathon runner, Brendan, isn't she?
She's probably the most experienced marathon runner in Britain, including the men, and she loves to run a marathon. Every week she's run marathons on consecutive weekends. She'll travel anywhere in Europe to run the marathon, and I think a lot of the men will guide their races from her because they know what kind of time she'll run, and I think they quite enjoy running alongside her. And there's my old friend Don McGregor from the 72 Olympics in Munich. He's come a long way since then, but he's almost as fast now as he was then. He's the doyen of marathon runners.
Now those are the serious runners, those that are all looking for time somewhere around about, well, 2:15, 2:20. A lot depends on weather conditions. Peter Fleming, you were in that front row last year, of course. How much of it is serious business? How much of it's kidding and joking?
Yeah, well, usually you find at the start that there is a wee bit of cajoling going on. I think the athletes try to relax as much as possible, and they get a spirit within themselves. Obviously, it's a long way, so they'll be joking with each other, trying to help each other relax, and obviously watching each other to make sure nobody's doing anything funny.
Well, there's not long to go now, and although most of the runners were here in plenty of time for the start this morning, taking the advice, early breakfast, arriving around the Glasgow Green earlier on, there was, of course, one latecomer who didn't quite arrive at the time he had hoped, as you can see. I'm not sure whether he's arriving for the marathon or trying to get home after a night out. Just 2 or 3 minutes to go then, and as you can see, the crowd's already out in force at this early hour on a Sunday morning. Obviously the most populated areas will be around the start and finish, but I think, as we'll see in the course of the next 4, 5, 6 hours, virtually every part of this 26-mile, 385-yard course will be lined with supporters. There are the 2 field guns. One, of course, as a spare in case the original fails to fire for any reason. 105-pack howitzers. We'll also see a great deal of that around the course as well. Jamie Gagan's miles faster. Let's hope he is. Just 2 minutes to the start. Still looks a little breezy, Brendan, but overall not bad conditions at all, are they?
No, I think the runners will be happy that the conditions are as they are, because the sky's clearing, and it's the coldness that we saw there earlier this morning is not there anymore. There's a bit of dampness in the air, which certainly helps, and they won't suffer from the heat, which is a major problem. But I imagine late September in Glasgow is a fairly decent time of year to run a marathon.
Minute and a half to go then. Let me just tell you a little more about those start guns. In fact, the gun crews there, who are under Sergeant Major Phil Shin of the Royal Artillery, have been taking part in a major NATO exercise in Germany over the last couple of weeks, Operation Lionheart, and they were only due to arrive back in Glasgow yesterday. But they're in position, ready for the stroke of 9:30. The gun's under the command of Captain Graham Bryson, who I'm sure many of you remember. As soon as those guns have been fired, changed into running kit. He ran last year, he's doing it again this year. And last year, Captain Bryson finished in 4 hours 25. And that included the 7 minutes it took for him to cross the start line. And of course, that's something else that the runners at the back of that huge throng of people will be taking note of. Most of them wearing their watches, and as they cross the start line, they'll take a note and deduct that from the time in the finishing clock to give them their true time for the course. 30 seconds to wait, we're here.
This is the Scots Boys Marathon of 1984. Remember the sponsor of the Glasgow Herald, Scots Boy Jones and Nike, the major sponsors.
It's the old centre of Glasgow, and very appropriate that this should be the starting point, and we can hear that chant of "Here we go." The runners here, the guns fire, and the 1984 Scots Porridge Marathon is underway.
10,200 runners set off from Glasgow Cross and cheering on their way.
And of course, one of the features of this opening few hundred yards, it is slightly uphill, and that's a good thing, because some of the less experienced and more enthusiastic runners always likely to set off too quickly and pay the price later in the race. And luckily, with this incline, that's going to help them to keep a reasonable pace. There they are, thronging around the old Tollbooth steeple. Been there since 1626. 10,173 starters. And that really is one of the great sporting spectacles of the year.
Who would have thought 3 years ago that you'd see 10,000 people running through the streets of Glasgow at 9:30 on a Sunday morning? You could have won millions of pounds if you'd had a bet on that, Doogie.
Well, it's all smiling faces at this stage, isn't it? Up towards the top of High Street. Their first turn. Round to the left into George Street. They'll head on down past the Strathclyde University buildings on the right-hand side, heading down towards George Square. On the left, the buildings of the Glasgow Herald newspaper, one of the sponsors of the marathon, as the runners head on down George Street. Well, there's Luke. And they can all find time to stop and give us a wave, hoping that the family, if they're not already out here, are at home watching. And the pack pouring round the corner. And of course, way down there at the bottom of High Street, the old street which connected Glasgow Cross with Glasgow Cathedral, and still does in fact, and they'll still be crossing the start line, setting the watches as they do so. There they are. You take anything up to 7, 8, 9 minutes if you're right at the back of the pack to get over the start line and begin your 26 miles, 385 yards. And there are the leaders as they head down George Street. The figure of Don McGregor, Brendan Foster mentioned, number 2 there in the black vest. 45 years old now, Don. And I think a lot of the runners here will be keeping Don on their sights. They know that he will pace himself as well as anyone. And if they keep Don in their sights, they'll head for a fast time and they won't hit too many problems.
Well, we've got all the ingredients of a really classic event here today. We've got 10,000 runners, as we've already heard, and there are 3,500 volunteers helping them to organise the course to get them on their way. We've got a very good class field, and we've got teams from England, Scotland, from Wales, from Northern Ireland, from Era, from Spain and from Italy. We've got all the regulars there having a bit of fun and having a laugh and all hoping to get round. There's the man with the bird on his head, on his cap. We've got the statutory Jimmy Savile, because there isn't a marathon that takes place these days without Jimmy running. Everyone loves to have him in their race. He gets more invitations to marathons these days than Charlie Spedding, who won a bronze medal in the Olympic Games. But every time he sees Charlie, he lets him know that he's a more popular marathon. He says, "I'm a more popular marathon runner than you, Charlie." But they're having a lot of fun out there. They're carrying their balloons and they've got their notices so we can identify them, so they can tell their friends at home that we're here. And did you see me in Glasgow? I was the one carrying the balloon. But I think we're going to see a good competitive race up at the front, and I think we're going to see a good average time for these finishers, because they have been following the schedules and they have been taking it fairly seriously, because they haven't just arrived out of their beds here without any sort of serious preparation. So I think we've got the formula right here. I think we've got a good organisation. and we've got things to look forward to over the next several hours that a city like Glasgow should be justly proud of, Doogie.
Let's head back to Glasgow Green again, and Captain Graham Bryson, having seen the firing of the gun to start the race, now changed into his running gear and off to run the Glasgow Marathon. Just back from Germany in Operation Lionheart.
Do you think that's a war wound on his left leg, Doogie?
Doesn't seem to be bothering him at the moment anyway, Brendan. That's the start line. Almost 6 minutes into the race, and still some of those runners haven't, well, those runners are now over the start line, but still some at the back haven't actually begun the marathon route. Most of the runners obviously come from Scotland, indeed from Glasgow, somewhere around 8,500 of the original 15,000 entrants from the city, but 30 different countries represented. After Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen, Dundee, Perth, 64 from London, Manchester, Liverpool, Sheffield, and one runner listed as coming from Birmingham. He's in there somewhere. And there's the view from our helicopter high above George Square as the runners turn from George Street past the city chambers, newly cleaned and looking absolutely marvellous. Glasgow's miles better, the slogan which has literally gone round the world. Proudly in front of the city chambers. That long crocodile of runners coming round the square. The cenotaph in the middle of George Square. 11 other statues ranging from Queen Victoria to Robert Burns. And of course Sir Walter Scott and his column in the centre. Now those are the back markers, the final few hundred now over the start line and on their way up High Street, including our 3 wheelchair competitors. They'll be right at the back, all heading for good times though. The wheelchair contestants at this early stage all have escorts holding disabled signs just to make sure they get on their way without mishap. Ken Mackay, one of the disabled competitors, aiming for a time of 4.5 hours. Dennis Boner from Inverclyde heading for 4 hours. That's a very good time for a wheelchair contestant. Well, the pace there looks sensible, shall we say, Brendan, for those back markers?
Yeah, I think that you did say earlier on that the uphill start was a good thing, and I agree with that, because often in the marathon, if the start is level or even downhill, some people do themselves so much damage in the first couple of miles that they really can't recover from it. But Peter ran the race last year. Peter, how does this course compare in sort of geography? Is it a tough course or is it an easy course?
Yeah, well, the first 6 miles is reasonably tough, and I think I must agree with what you said. I think it actually slows the back runners down a wee bit, which helps them towards the end. It'll keep them from sort of going off too fast, which can be a problem, especially in sort of the flatter courses.
There's the leading group here, and I'm pretty sure there's somebody sitting right next to me who'd much rather be in that shot in the middle there, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, the heart's pumping here like mad. We're already about 10 minutes into the race, and we can see already the race developing as the past 2 years. there's a sort of group of about 30 there, and one of these guys is going to win, so they'll all be watching each other, getting set into a steady pace, and they'll just be relaxing at the moment and taking it easy.
Graham Milne of Aberdeen AC, number 5, out there in front just at the moment. Just passing the 2-mile post as they head along Sauchiehall Street. Having gone through Glasgow's Charing Cross, let's leave the leaders and go back once again to the High Street. Those runners a mile and a half behind the leaders already, and the famous bobbing head shot. They're now all turning left into George Square. None of those runners aiming for anything better than 4.5 hours, perhaps even less than that. Tree-line Sauchiehall Street, Charing Cross in the background, and Graham Milne of Aberdeen, number 5, out in front, 36-year-old, the director of the recent Aberdeen Marathon. Claims to have been a little short of training because of his duties as an organiser, and will help with the pacemaking, but may pull out at the halfway stage, he says. 6th in Glasgow 2 years ago, and has a personal best of 2 hours 21 in the London Marathon in 1983. And there's our helicopter, Heli-Telly, providing us with these superb pictures which were so much a part of last year's marathon. And they'll be with us throughout the race, hovering there above the Sauchiehall Street roofs and providing those pictures we saw down through the streets of the leading pack. There we are. The motorcycle outriders and the lead car taking the runners along Sauchiehall Street, where they'll turn into Kelvin Way. Incidentally, the busiest spell at the finish, according to the predicted times of the contestants, will be between 4 and 4.5 hours. That's from 1:30 until 2 o'clock in Glasgow Green. Was the most popular estimated finishing time. There's the leading pack again. 3:09.10, James Warwick from Dumfriesshire, running his first marathon. He predicted 3 hours 15. He's up with the leaders at the moment. Highly unlikely that he'll stay there, but he'll have the thrill of knowing that he's right out there in front in the early stages anyway. Around they go into Kelvin Way, Kelvin Grove Park, with the tennis courts and the bowling greens, through under the trees. Don McGregor on the far right there from Fife AC, Graham Milne. Looks like that might be Jim Brown alongside him. Number 3. Jim actually wearing number 8, looks like a 3, but that's number 8, Jim Brown from Clyde Valley, from the World Junior Cross Country Championship. He's got a best time of 2 hours 19, so he'll certainly be there or thereabouts at the finish.
Actually, Jim Brown has the potential, or has had the potential, to be one of the top marathon runners in Britain, but he's been very good over the cross country. He's been very good on the track. He's run 28 minutes for 10,000 meters, and for some reason he hasn't quite made the transition to the marathon, but maybe today's the one, because this is the one for any aspiring Scottish athlete. This is the one to try and win. This is the one to make your name, and this is the one to make you famous, really.
Well, there's the end of Kelvin Way and the turn into University Avenue, and the first feeding station. Some of the runners happy to ignore this one. One or two taking on water. Our lead camera car and the motorcycle outriders turning round. The leading pack then coming out from under the trees in Kelvin Way and turning left up that fairly steepish slope of University Avenue. And as you can see, unlike last year when we were blessed with virtually perfect weather, as they pass the 3-mile marker, it really is now beginning to rain fairly heavily. You can see that uphill stretch climbing up to the top of University Avenue. Just how hard is this, Peter Fleming? Is it fairly easy this early on, or do you feel it?
Yeah, last year, in fact, over the first 6 miles, I found the hardest, and probably about 2 or 3 times I felt as if I was going to drop off the leading pack. But, you know, looking at them, they're actually going fairly fast compared to last year's pace. We can see we've got Jim Brown, Tony Coyne, who's a club mate of mine, Andy Daly, Alistair Douglas, Andy Girling. So they're all up there, and the pace seems to be fairly fast at the moment.
So a little relief for them there as they reach the top of the hill and begin to cruise down towards the junction with Byers Road. Of Glasgow University in the foreground there. Jim Brown in the centre of that leading pack. James Warwick from Dumfriesshire on the left. Just about to make their right turn into Byers Road. You can see by the umbrellas in the background there that it really is raining fairly heavily. Big crowd here in Byers Road to welcome the leading pack. Now they are turning into Byers Road, the centre of Glasgow's West End. From the top of Byers Road at the junction with Great Western Road, we can see the race director's car. Race director's car is actually being driven, as it has been in the last couple of years, by Bob Dalglish's brother Ian. You can see the time there. It's coming up to 18.5 minutes into the race. Also travelling in that car, incidentally, will be the race referee George Donald and Glasgow's Lord Provost Robert Gray, who asked if he could travel in the race director's car. And they'll get a very good view of that leading pack as they're just beginning to break away a little bit.
Well, Jim Brown's pressing ahead in very, very early on in the race, because there's a good group of athletes there that we're looking at, including Jim Dingwall and Don McGregor and most of the English boys, and there's 2 of the Spaniards there. So there's a good group of athletes there. They know what they're doing. And Jim is a bit aggressive. I mean, in a marathon, you don't have to be so aggressive. In a marathon, you need to conserve your energy. And Jim's biting in there, the kind of manner that you would approach a 6-mile road race or a 10-kilometer road race. But certainly there's no need for him to run a marathon as aggressively as this. Having said that, he is the class runner in the field. And if he can just hold together over the course, then he may surprise a whole lot of them. But I don't think he needs to go after it as aggressively as he's doing.
Well, Jim's out there with Jim Warwick from Dumfriesshire and Alistair Douglas from Victoria Park AC. That's the leading group of 3 coming round Queen Margaret Drive. The Botanic Gardens on the right. BBC headquarters on the left of the picture. It's greenhouse there, the Kibble Palace. What about this pace, Peter? You think perhaps Jim's pouring it on a little too much at this early stage?
Yeah, well, let's see. This is going to be a very interesting race. Obviously, with Jim pushing the pace so early on, this pack here just coming up are going to be deciding whether it's worthwhile chasing it at this early pace or leaving it till 15 miles and then maybe pulling them back in. So it's going to be quite interesting with Jim being so aggressive so early on in the race.
You can see just over there on the right of the picture the 4 mile mark. Those green mileage indicators all the way around the course. And away there in the background, the traffic on Maryhill Road. Back down on Byers Road again, and already you can see how quickly the field thins out from those massed ranks back in High Street, George Street through George Square. Already beginning to thin out now, and everyone with plenty of room to move.
Well, I would hope that 4 mile mark was accurate, knowing the organisation here. It probably was, which means they're running about 5 minute mile pace. They went through 4 miles in just over 20 minutes, which would bring them home in about 2 hours 10, 2 hours 11 minutes, which is, we were right in saying that Jim's going after it a bit aggressively, because this isn't the kind of course where you can run 2 hours 10 minutes, because that would be an absolutely world-class time, and this is a fairly difficult course. Peter, wouldn't you say it would be tough to run 2:10, 2:11 on here?
Oh, without a doubt. I think, obviously, Alistair Douglas, number 37 there, this is his first marathon as well, so it shows that it might be a wee bit of inexperience in the first two there, going out so aggressively. But maybe Jim's been training, he's been running very well recently, and it might be that he might be able to hold on. But I'm very doubtful if we'll be able to keep up the 5 minute mile pace after 20 miles.
So, round they come into Maryhill Road. We'll now have that long run up along Maryhill Road before turning down past the fringe of Dorsholm Park towards Anniesland. And as you said, Peter, the two runners who are tracking Jim Brown, less experienced, both running their first marathons. And I think perhaps that pack behind them, which contains most of the rest of the class runners, are quite happy to let Jim go. And
yeah, well, this shows a bit. I mean, you've got Don McGregor, you've got Jim Dingwall, you've got people that have run very good marathons, and obviously they've decided maybe to let these people go a wee bit, just maybe keep within, so they're within striking distance towards the middle of the race.
Maryhill Road on the side of another village, which at one time was considered to be a long way out of Glasgow, takes its name from the proprietor of the lands, who was indeed Miss Maryhill. Yes, there really was one. In fact, it was also around here that the first temperance movement was started in Britain. Preston apparently claims the credit, but it apparently did begin in Maryhill. An uncle of Miss Maryhill brought back the temperance idea from the United States, so the pledge was signed here a long time ago.
I've always felt that Jim Brown was a very good athlete. I've seen him run some road races, and I've seen him run on the cross country very, very well. And always felt that when he moved to a marathon he could do great things. But I think he's working a bit hard at this stage of the race. He's getting involved in the race, and really the marathon is all about conserving your energy until well past the 15 mile mark. It's not about who can run the fastest 4 miles, first 4 miles fastest. It's about who can keep their head, not get involved in pouring out unnecessary mental energy. It's really reserving your mental energy for the later stages. And I just think Jim looks to be running a little bit too hard, because I would imagine that the two runners alongside him aren't going to feature in the finish, and I would imagine that looking back into that second group, that's where we'll be doing. And there's Leslie Watson in amongst the men runners. She'll be up amongst some of the good men club runners because she's a very, very good athlete. She loves to come back here to Glasgow because this is where she started, and they're going through the 4-mile mark in 25 minutes, which is 6-minute mile pace, which is a fairly respectable time. It's a good time. It's 2:36 marathon time, which is a very good time. So I mean, she's running well too.
Well, there's the first of some, no doubt, very bizarre costumes we'll be seeing in the course of this marathon. John Burley from Largs was the gentleman with the fluorescent pink hair. He's aiming for 3 hours, and he's pretty much on course for that. Still the rain coming down as the runners head out. 25 minutes as they go through the 5-mile mark under the canal on Maryhill Road.
Yeah, there's another very, very tough hill coming up here. I found it quite tough last year. Again, as I say, you know, it's quite a hard first 6 miles. And whether Jim Brown's actually decided he's going to win this by front running, I don't know if his tactics are going to work very well. We can see it's quite wet and a wee bit blustery looking, so I think this is going to be a wee bit too tough for Jim at the moment.
What about the rain, Peter? Just how much of a distraction or a nuisance is it?
Well, it can get a bit of a distraction if it continues and gets any heavier, but if it's just a light drizzle, it's actually of a benefit to the runners.
Certainly if it's going to rain throughout, it might cause 1 or 2 problems on the cobbled stretches, because there are 1 or 2 of those which they've got to get over.
Yeah, well, hopefully they'll be able to sort of adjust for that, but you know, the shoes should be able to keep them from anybody having a disaster and slipping.
There's the pack tracking the 3 front runners. See Jim Dingwall, very distinctive there with the beard, the research chemist, and certainly one of the favourites. One of the fastest times ever run by a Scot in a marathon, Jim Dingwall. Making the turn now down Skaythorne Road, round the fringes of Dawsholme Park, heading towards the Anniesland area and the 6-mile mark, which they'll hit on Temple Road. Now there's Jimmy Savile heading along Byers Road. I was speaking to him last night, and what was it, Brandon? This is his 5th marathon in 5 consecutive weekends.
Yeah, he's run. This is his 5th marathon in 5 weekends, and he's averaged 3 hours 42 minutes for the others. So he runs respectably well these days for his age, which he won't ever disclose, and has promised me he'll kill me if I ever tell anybody on the television. But he's running on his own today. He usually has his entourage. He usually has his friends from Leeds, who he stays with at the Leeds Infirmary, running with him. But today he's not waving today, so maybe he's taking it seriously, because he reckons that when he's got the jewellery on and he waves to the crowds, it takes him that little bit longer. But today he's not waving, and he's a little bit inconspicuous there in that black thing, because he's got the gold lame gear on underneath it, and he likes to run as the oven-ready DJ in his gold lame suit.
Well, there's a fairly scenic view. That's right in the heart of Glasgow, although at one time, of course, it was very much country area. Glasgow's Wildlife Park, Dawsholme Park, left in its natural state, virtually, apart from the roadways and paths. Dawsholme a bird sanctuary. And that leading pack fighting their way up the hill. That really is quite a steep hill there, Peter, isn't it?
Yeah, it is quite steep, and it does take, as I say before, the first 6 miles is very, very tough. And, you know, as I said, Jim Brown, maybe I've just got his tactics wrong a wee bit today, because I can't see him keeping this pace up for very much longer.
Well, he had a long look behind there to see whether he had shaken off the pack. He'll probably know that the 2 runners who are with him That's Jim Warwick from Annan. You can tell by his race number that he's not really expected to figure in the finish. And Alistair Douglas from Victoria Park AC, 23-year-old student who, although he's a competent athlete, he's running his first marathon, so I think we can discount those two. And the leading pack behind, keeping them well within their sights, but not quite subscribing to this punishing pace. Douglas of Victoria Park actually predicting he would do 2:17, which was Peter's winning time last year, 2:17:46 I think it was, Peter, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's correct.
So if he does that in his first marathon, that really will be quite an achievement. Back once again to the bridge on Queen Margaret Drive, and the mass ranks waving as they come along a very wet roadway. Botanic Gardens behind them there. Some unusual headgear. 2929. Giving us a wave as he goes past. That's William McWilliam from Cumbernauld. He's heading for 3 hours 10. And there's Byers Road again. The famous Glaswegian cry of encouragement, "Gun yourself." They're certainly not gone themselves this morning. There's 10,000 of them.
What does that mean then, Dougie?
That means go on yourself, Brendan. It's a fairly useless piece of information. And there's how it's spelt. Maybe we'd like to take note of this, Brendan. Go on yourself, Arthur, in this case.
You don't mind if I take that one back home and use it in England, eh?
You're very welcome to it. Ewan Patterson going by there, 2273 in the bathing costume. That's Temple Road, just heading towards the junction with Bearsden Road. The leading pack now coming towards the 6-mile mark. Jim Brown still leading them down Bearsden Road. Number 36, I think that is. That's Andy Girling, I think, Peter, isn't it?
Yeah, this is Andy Girling, and obviously he's decided at this point to maybe push on a wee bit himself. He's obviously decided that he doesn't want to let these people get too far in front of him. I think after the 6-mile point, the course is reasonably flat till the Barhead Road, so they've got about a 20-yard lead there. Whether they keep this pace going or the pack actually catch them, we'll see later on.
Well, Jim Brown's intention was to open up a big lead. It's certainly not succeeded, and who knows just how much he's taken out of himself, because looking back into the pack, Don McGregor, Laurie Spence there in the blue and yellow, Jim Dingwall's there, most of the international runners, and they're still very much in touch with that leading group of 4.
Actually, there's two, Scott, there's the 2 lads next to Jim Brown. Alistair Douglas is a very good over the shorter distances, so he's going to have no trouble coping with this kind of pace. And Andy Girling turned down an international for Great Britain, which would have been his first international. He was invited to run in Belgium this weekend, and he said, no, I'm going for the Glasgow Marathon. That's the one I've been aiming for. I'm a student up there in Glasgow, and this is the one I want to do. So you can tell the intention there. That's very positive and very very sensible, because if you live here in Glasgow, he knows the course, he knows the surrounds. It makes it a lot easier than having to travel abroad, but it tells you that his intention is nothing other than a very high-class performance. So he must be in pretty good shape, and he'll figure in the results, as will, I think, Alistair Douglas.
The music provided by the 3rd Glasgow BB Trumpet Band. Music all the way around the route. And there's the scene in Byres Road, heading up from University Avenue towards Great Western Road. Still quite a number with the bin bags on for warmth and also protection from the rain. And there's one of the wheelchair contestants just disappearing out of the bottom of the picture there. He's keeping up well. You'll find out hopefully as they come up over the Queen Margaret Drive Bridge, but could well have been Dennis Boner from Inverclyde. He's looking for 4 hours.
Archie McPherson was talking to Chris Brasher earlier, and he was talking about the running boom and would it continue and could it continue. I think it's shots like these that will keep this thing going, because there'll be somebody sitting up there in one of the aisles or in the Shetlands or on Inverness or in Dundee watching it and saying, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And I think that's what this event's all about. Of course, it's interesting to see what happens at the front, but a more significant movement in running, in athletics these days, is to see men jigging around like that, getting his face on the telly. He'll be famous when he goes to work tomorrow.
And of course, so many of those runners running for charity, raising thousands, indeed millions of pounds. Upwards of £1 million likely to be raised in sponsorship for various charities, from the very big national charities, cancer research, arthritis, rheumatism, all of those, to very small local charities as well. Some of them will be running to raise nothing more glamorous than a few toys for the local playgroup, but all of them helping to raise vast sums of money and meet the challenge of those 26 miles, 385 yards. Leaders have now reached Annisland Road. Jim Brown still there. Andy Girling there in the blue, just taking a drink at the feeding station there. There's the view from overhead, and a nice touch there as Andy Girling hands on the water to runner going forward, Alistair Douglas. So as the leaders head down Annisland Road towards the 8-mile mark at the junction with Victoria Drive, back on Queen Margaret Drive. The wheelchair contestants, 2 of them together there in fact. 9651 is indeed Dennis Boner from Inverclyde. He's 32, a technician from Christon, and looking for a time of 4 hours. Luckily the rain seems to have stopped, and it's a very bright morning indeed. And those indeed the weather conditions we were told to expect. Showery, cloudy overhead, 1 or 2 sunny spells. There's the smiling face of the balloon, and that I'm sure will get heavier and heavier as the race goes on. And those are all pretty reasonable runners as well. They're all good club men coming down from Maryhill Road into Dawsholme Park. Big crowds, as you can see, welcoming those runners coming down towards Annisland Cross. Sunshine after the rain. And that is Crawford Gilliland, who's a Glasgow hairdresser. He's running to raise money for Craighead School for the mentally handicapped. He ran last year, and he says he does it simply for fun, and that's pretty obvious by the gear. But he says he's not good enough, he's not fit enough to be out there racing. He's just out running and enjoying it and raising some money. Well, everyone can find the time and the energy to give us a wave as they head along Queen Margaret Drive. Not too many funny costumes so far. There's perhaps a little bit further back in the field. It's all very well running around in a gorilla suit or a Pink Panther suit or with some strange headgear, but it adds to the weight. It means you've got to be a little bit fitter. It means you're going to go a little bit slower. And we'll no doubt see those a little bit further back in the field. Heading down Skaythorne Road. A little bit of relief for the runners there. They come downhill. Now there's the Pink Panther, 1167 there. He ran last year, and in fact, very interesting because he's allergic to tap water. He's running for Action Against Allergy, and it was diagnosed some years ago, David Mellons, it is, the Pink Panther, that the problems he was having was down to the fact that he is allergic to the minute amounts of chlorine in tap water, and he's in fact supplied his own drinking water. At each of the feeding stations, David, the Pink Panther, has supplied his own special drinking water, clearly marked, and he'll have to go for those. In fact, last year he finished in some distress, and the first day people tried to press water upon him. He was a little bit dehydrated, and he had to force it away and say, no, I can't touch it. I must have my special water. So there he is, running, as you can see, for allergy research. David Mellons, the Pink Panther. In fact, he's got his own special water there. You can see marked in pink. 1132. We saw going through there, Andrew Wilson. And the tail enders. Now well thinned out. They're still away back in Byers Road. Something like 6 or 7 miles behind the leaders. Well, we'll be back in around 15 minutes with more from Marathon 84. There's someone who's celebrating his anniversary. As he says, what a way to spend an anniversary. I hope he makes it. That's where we'll leave it for the time being, with those 10,000 runners heading round the streets of Glasgow. Join us again in 15 minutes for more from Marathon 84. Massive building there, Glasgow's new exhibition centre, the leading pack in the Scots Porridge Marathon 1984, as they were when you left us 15 minutes ago. Andy Girling, number 36. The surprise packet, Jim Warwick, the labourer from Annan, 3910. Predicted he would do 3 hours 15. At the moment, he's right up there with the leaders. Jim Brown, who made the early break, number 8. And at the back there, Alistair Douglas, number 37 from Victoria Park AC. The break not by any means decisive, but those 4 still out in front. And the pace, Brendan?
Well, they ran through 10 miles in 51:30, that leading group, which would bring them home, if they continued at that rate, would bring them home in 2 hours 15 minutes, or slightly under 2 hours 15 minutes, which would be a course record, which tells you that they're running very, very well. The interesting character, as you mentioned, Dougie, is Jim Warwick from Annan in Dumfriesshire. But I think that following group contains some dangers. There's 2 or 3 Englishmen in there who are running very well. There's Laurie Spence in there, there's Jim Dingwall, there's Don McGregor in there. And I wouldn't be surprised this group is closing now, because the pace is strong. The conditions are very good. I mean, they're probably as good a conditions as they've had here for the Glasgow Marathon, so we could get a course record. But don't underestimate those 2, Alistair Douglas and Jim Brown, as well as Andy Girling. Alistair Douglas, it's his first marathon, but these days that's not necessarily such a bad thing. I mean, just a few months ago in Los Angeles, we saw John Tracy from Ireland running in his first marathon and winning a silver medal in the Olympic Games. So you don't have to have a string of marathons behind you. It might help to have the experience of running a long way on the roads, but you know, it's not necessarily the case, because that Alistair Douglas has probably got the speed of this pack. Jim Brown, as I said earlier, has run very well, maybe a little bit aggressively, but he's settled in now. He's not done anything outrageous in the last couple of miles, and he's given himself every chance. But I mean, Jim Warwick from Annan, that's a real fairy tale, because even if he slows down dramatically now, he's still going to run considerably faster than his predicted time of 3 hours 15. That's almost what this event's all about, you know, because the 3 of them probably won't even know who he is. They'll know each other, because they've run against each other many, many times, but they won't know who he is, which is a little disconcerting.
Well, the morning sunshine on the River Clyde there, and the runners now down round to about the 12-mile mark as they'll turn on to the Brumalot. There's the leading 4. And way back 5 miles behind them, the pack going through Annie's Land, the musical accompaniments of the trumpet band, and the gentleman in the lion costume is Angus Allen of Cumbernauld. He describes himself simply as a manager, and he's managing quite well at the moment, swinging the tail. And the weather conditions will certainly be to his liking, because it must be pretty warm inside that lion suit. And the fact that it's a cool morning, a little bit of a breeze, rain showers, that'll help to keep him cool. Although the rain, I would imagine, will make the suit a bit heavier as well.
Well, they've just gone through 12 miles, that leading group, in 1 hour, 1 minute and 40 seconds, which means they're running still just over 5-minute mile pace, which is still around about 2:15 for the marathon. And they look strong, they look comfortable, and there's nothing that suggests that they won't keep this pace going. And that following group now realizes that the race is on in all seriousness, as well as those little kids there. And they're realizing that there's going to be a winner possibly from this group, so they've settled down and started chasing them.
Well, isn't that a lovely picture of the city? The Kingston Bridge there, the main bridge across the river, taking traffic north and south. Runners will go underneath it to the next bridge along. That's the one at the top of the picture, King George V Bridge. That marks the halfway point. They'll cross it to go out onto the south side loop, and 12 miles later we'll come back over the same bridge with only a mile to go to the finish in Glasgow Green. The distinctive sound of the Silver Shadows marching band will greet the runners as they come along the Brumalot. The time there on the race director's car, you can just see 1 hour 3 minutes 31. Still, it's Jim Brown, Alistair Douglas, Andy Girling and Jim Warwick from Annan out in front. Just talking about all the various musical items around the course. Peter, did you find that encouraging?
Well, the lead runners tend to sort of ignore slightly the bands and the crowds. Certainly towards the end it does make a lot of difference, but at the moment all they're worried about is actually concentrating in form, getting their pace right and making sure everything's working well. You know, at the moment they'll be keeping the pace going as much as possible. It's interesting just to say that Alistair Douglas and Andy Gilling have been training quite a lot recently together, so they'll probably obviously be feeling more comfortable than maybe Jim and David Warwick there, so it might be that they will be feeling quite good at the moment.
Well, they've certainly now taken the lead.
I must say that talking about the bands, I think it's an interesting idea. It does now add to the spectacle, and as we organise the Great North Run in the northeast of England every June, this is an idea that, if you don't mind, I'd like to take back with me and try and add to the flavour of the thing down there with the marching bands and the twirling their flags and things. I mean, I think it's good. It makes the event a lot more spectacular. And as Peter said, the lead runners won't bother about it. They probably won't even hear it. In fact, afterwards, if you asked them, they probably wouldn't even know there were any marching bands out there. But the mass of the field will probably enter into the spirit of the things later on. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the odd one stop and do a Highland fling and then get on with these marathons.
I wonder how the crowds in Newcastle for the Great North Run would take to the Sair Headies Cayley Band from Lossiemouth, because we just heard them briefly. They're playing in the Broomilla. One of their number, in fact, Raymond Wood, is running, and the rest of his Cayley Band are down playing in a 40-foot trailer. They insisted in coming. They asked Bob Dalgleish if they could play in the route, and he was only too pleased to have them. And in fact, they played at the pre-race Cayley last night as well. So there we are, marvellous view there of George V Bridge. The lead runners now over there and onto the south side of the river, heading along Clyde Place there. They'll now turn left over the cobbles up to Paisley Road West, and a long way back at Anniesland Cross, still the bulk of the runners. I'm not sure whether that's meant to be a caber that that runner's carrying, but that is making things so much more difficult for him. It's hard enough running 26 miles, but running it with your arms held upright and supporting that all the way around, that really must be tiring.
I think he stole Jimmy Savile's cigar, actually.
You could well be right, Peter. Maybe that's what it is. He's holding it up to let us have a good look anyway. It's Brian Robertson, in fact, from the DL Rugby Club in Motherwell. He's an accountant, 35. And I think we're just getting the time at 13 miles, Brendan.
Well, the time at 13 miles, which is just short of halfway, is 1 hour 6 minutes and 50 seconds, and they ran the last mile between 12 and 13 miles in 5 minutes 10 seconds, which is still alongside that pace that we talked about. They're heading for around 2:15. They're running about just over 5 minute mile pace, which is good class running. They've got the hilly part of the course behind them now, so the rest of the course, obviously they're getting more tired, and obviously the last 6 miles from 20 to the finish is the tough bit, but this is very, very respectable running.
The Silver Shadows marching band from Bearsden, entertaining the crowds, who are, as you can see, lined up 4 and 5 deep at this excellent vantage point, because of course the crowds here not only see the runners going out and over the bridge, but they'll see them coming back over in an hour or so from now. The sky overhead looking a little bit threatening there. There's obviously more rain showers to come, but it's a bright morning between the showers, and for the runners certainly the conditions very good indeed. 110 is Jack Adair from Linlithgow. He's aiming for 2 hours 20. I think he's been a little bit ambitious at that, maybe, but he's certainly heading for a good time. Number 144, Edward Devlin from Clyde Valley, teacher from Coatbridge. And there's Crawford Gilliland again. He's the balloon man. Andy Pandy running alongside doesn't seem to have a number, which is unfortunate because I don't think we can identify him.
Is it the guy with the balloons coming down here? Well, it's quite far away.
Crawford, I think that's some replacement balloons he's picking up there. Maybe they go down as the run goes on, but getting plenty of encouragement there. Crawford Gilliland running for mentally handicapped. I don't know whether the balloons are a help or a hindrance. Maybe it'd help him off the ground. Here's Malcolm Wilson with him.
Well. Thank you so much. You must have hydrogen in the balloons or something.
Helium. I supply the gas myself because I'm such a effervescent character. And what, you're looking very well yourself.
Right, that's
Not joining us.
Well, it looks a lot easier than it feels, I must say. Are you going to pop off the balloons as you go on a 26-mile strip?
They help very, very. I would hope that more people would do this next year. I feel that the wind tends to long the last 385 yards, which I need all the help I can get.
What sort of a time do you think it'll do if all your balloons get down?
Well, unfortunately, the sound quality are not all that it might be. We'll obviously get that put right for you. But Malcolm Wilson there with Crawford Gilliland.
Every Scotsman is a comedian, Doogie. Everyone they talk to have got great lines coming back, unless that it's all rehearsed. I don't think it is, though.
Listen, nothing in this marathon's rehearsed, Brendan. You should know that. This is just that the well-known Glasgow sense of humour coming out, and that's not only among the runners, but some of the comments from the sidelines, I'm quite sure, are well worth picking up as well. Look at the crowds gathered at George V Bridge. That's marvellous, because it has been a pretty showery morning, and there must have been a temptation among a lot of these people just to perhaps do what you're doing and stay at home, watch it on television. But they've come out, they're supporting the runners as they turn round towards the halfway mark. And that, I think, is Harry McEachran going through, who is the oldest man in the race. I'm not quite certain just as we see him going through. If it is Harry, he's 75, he's from Manswood. He ran last year and finished in just over 4 hours. Certainly going well at the moment.
Actually, just to correct you, that's actually Bill Stoddart, who runs for Greenock Well Park, and he's still quite old. He's about 49.50, and he's actually been running very well. He was 7th this year in the Inverclyde Marathon, so he's doing quite well at the moment.
Hey, Peter, we'll all be 49 or 50, you know. You're not old when you're 49 or 50.
You're absolutely right, Peter, it is. He's 53, and he's aiming for 2:28.20. Bill Stoddart from Greenock Well Park.
And there's another one of my club mates, 114, that's Jim Russell, and he's got a fair reputation down in the club, not as a runner, but as a drinker.
Well, he's going to have trouble running 26 miles holding the horse's head. Obviously the visibility is not all that it might be. We can just try and catch his number. That's 15,362, 15362 for the horse's head. Having a few visibility problems, but giving us a wave and a smile. It's Billy Shields, who's 24. He's from Glasgow. He's running his first marathon. Meanwhile, over on the south side of the river, the leaders are just turning into Paisley Road West. Paisley Road West, of course, is at about the 14-mile mark, slightly more, 14 and a half. Andy Girling Alistair Douglas and Jim Brown, and not surprisingly Jim Warwick, the surprise packet from Annan, has dropped out of that leading bunch. How far back? We're not quite sure. He's certainly not in sight there, and there he is now. He's now being dropped from the leading three, and those three are maintaining their lead very well, Brendan.
Yeah, they're running well. They're running still around 5 minutes 10-second pace, which would bring them home, as I said earlier, in around 2 hours 15 minutes. They'll inevitably slow in the last 6 miles, but they're on for a very good time. And the lad from Annan, James Warwick, has run very well. I mean, he ran halfway almost at about 2:15 pace, which, you know, it's a good step in the right direction. I hope he doesn't suffer too much in the later stages, because he looked very comfortable at that pace. He ran through 10 miles just over 50 minutes, which is good class running, and he's come from nowhere. He's obviously trained hard for the thing, and all credit to him. I think that's what this event's all about. You know, take your chance and have a go. But that second group, they're not too far behind in terms of marathon terms, really. And the two Englishmen are running well in there. The one that I fancy to do very well in the race, John Boyes from Bournemouth, who's run 2 hours 17 in London, and, you know, prepared very well for the race. So I don't think it's over, but I think the two Scotsmen, Andy Girling, well, actually he lives in Scotland, he's an Englishman, and his training partner Alistair Douglas look very strong, and Jim Brown settled down in 3rd place. And if Jim could only get it right in a marathon, I think the marathon running world would know something about this boy, because he's a very good class athlete. He spent a lot of time looking around and wavering from side to side. I would think he has a little problem with his concentration, but that isn't too much of a showing himself too much at this point in the race. But in the lead there, Andy Girling looks good and looks strong. And as I said earlier, he turned down a trip to Belgium to run here, turned down his first Great Britain vest to run here, and that tells a story in itself.
There's King George V Bridge again, with the massive runners and massive spectators alongside, supporting them all the way. It's raining once again, as I think you can see. A railway bridge alongside, trains heading in towards Glasgow Central Station.
I must say, Dougie, even though it is raining, as a foreigner, I must say that Glasgow looks magnificent. The shots we've seen, the greenery, the things that one doesn't expect as an outsider to see here along the river bank there, the flower beds and the plants, and that. It looks absolutely fantastic. I mean, a totally different view that one ever gets of Glasgow. So I think this event does enormous things for the city, and as an outsider, I must say it does look terrific.
Well, that's certainly nice to hear. I think all of us in Glasgow are very conscious of the very unfair image the city sometimes has with people in other parts of the country. And you really can see why Glasgow is the dear green place. Those are the runners going through a rain shower. Just approaching the 15-mile mark now. As you can see the time there, 1 hour 17:20. Still Andy Girling, Jim Brown and Alistair Douglas. That is Ibrox Stadium, the marvellous home of Glasgow Rangers, one of the most impressive stadia in Europe. And the runners will just pass to the left of that. Ibrox, of course, deserted now, but very different story yesterday afternoon when Rangers were playing Dundee United. Over we go to the junction with the M8 and the lead runners. A pack of 3, closely followed by most of the other fancied runners in this race. Heading along now towards Bellahouston Park.
Well, we can see the rain's getting rather heavy, so I think they'll be finding this a wee bit of an annoyance, whether it's going to cool them down or not. But I can just see in 2nd place there, Andy Daly, he's the leading lady.
Back on George V bridges, Leslie Watson just in the left of the picture there. She'll still be the leading lady in this race. She's been second in the last 2 years. She would love, no doubt, to go one better this year, and she's on course to do that at the moment. So the leaders almost at Bellahouston Park, the pack at the halfway stage at George V bridge. And that's where we're leaving Marathon 84 for the moment. Join us again in around 20 minutes from now. Welcome back to Glasgow, to the Scots Porridge Marathon, and running along Barhead Road are two leaders. That leading group of four now down to just two. Andy Girling in front, from Bellahouston Jim Brown, number 8's behind, and Jim Brown running doggedly on. He made the break, it wasn't decisive. He's looked so uncomfortable, but that's just his running style. Andy Girling and Jim Brown out in front from the following pack, which itself is now beginning to thin out. Heading along Barhead Road, Glasgow, of course, a city surrounded by golf courses. Cowglen Golf Club and Pollock Golf Club there, and you can see there the extent of the lead which Girling and Brown have over the following pack. And Brendan, I think you've got the time for 19 miles?
They went through 19 miles in 1 hour, 38 minutes and 34 seconds, which would again bring them home in close to 2 hours, 15 minutes. But there's a race on here because the leading group there of two, which is whittled down from 4, is followed by, I think it's John Boys from Bournemouth and Laurie Spence, the Scottish, who's in the Scottish team. Oh, actually, he's one of the top Scottish athletes. I don't think he's in the Scottish team, but he's here to prove that he's good enough to be in the Scottish team. So the race is not over by any means yet. There's 7 miles to go, and the last 6 miles and 6.5 miles of a marathon are really the crucial stages. Yes, it is. It's John Boys from Bournemouth and Laurie Spence. Laurie Spence looks as though he's working very, very hard there, and that gap is not excessive. In a marathon, anything can happen. In fact, the experienced marathon runners say that the halfway point in a marathon is not the geographical halfway point of 13 miles. In fact, it's 22 miles, because the last 4 miles are where half the work is done. So there's plenty to happen yet. Doesn't that look magnificent, though, Doug? You said about the golf courses, it looks a very, very pleasant part of the city. It'd be a pleasure to come up here and run around there, I think.
I'll give you a game of golf over the one on the right anytime. That's Pollock Golf Club there. And that's part of the Pollock estate, which we'll be seeing when the runners turn round and enter the estate from bottom of picture. Well, while the leaders head along that long stretch you can see there of Barhead Road, back at Anniesland, the vast mass of runners still heading through, of course, and Dee Hepburn has now caught up with number 15107, who is Karen Duff from Cumbernauld.
Right, so how are you feeling now? Okay. Just now. You're looking awful good. Wish I felt awful good. Do you always wear a green wig? No, first time. Is it just the two of you that are running today? Well, we're actually here separately, we just met. Ah, I see. So is this the first marathon for you? For me, yes. Well, I'm sure you're going to do really well. We'll see you at Glasgow Green then, hopefully. Bye-bye.
I hope the run doesn't make the green wig run.
I'm just wondering, Dougie, at this point in the race, the leading group's whittled down to 2. I wonder, Peter, if you were in this race, would you rather be one of the leading group of 2, or would you rather be coming from behind and catching them?
Yeah, I think I would rather be coming from behind, because obviously the Jim Brown and Andy have been working very hard to keep this lead going. It's quite funny that Laurie Spence ran this race in 1981 and ran 2:42. He trained hard for it, and he was looking to win it that year. So he might be out to prove is all wrong this time.
Well, as you spoke there, Andy Girling put a burst in and started to break Jim Brown. We talked about Jim Brown. We've said how good class athlete he is, but we've also said that maybe the distance is not his best event, and he's looking desperately over his shoulder there, and he sees behind him John Boys, who's run a very sensible race in 3rd place, and just dropping off behind John Boys is Laurie Spence. So Andy Girling's made a certain move here for the finish. It's a long way to go yet. There's a lot can happen in a marathon. And Jim Brown, once you start to struggle in a marathon around the 20-mile mark, then all kinds of things can happen to you in the later stages. So it's turning out to be what we said. It's going to be an exciting race, and Andy Girling, who told you earlier, was really committed to this event and made the decision to come here rather than represent Great Britain in Belgium. We can see why now. He's obviously knew he was in good form. He knew this was his kind of event, and delighted to see that he's having the opportunity to show his form in the place where he's lived for the last 5 years. But there, in 3rd place, John Boys is closing very quickly. He ran 2:17 in London, and he's catching Jim Brown there, and he's looking strong. And he ran, as I said, he ran 2:17 in London. He told me last night that he's fitter than he was then. He was with his wife. She was having a sherry at the reception last night, and he was having orange juice. But he said he thinks tonight he'll have something a little bit stronger than orange juice. And if he keeps going like this, he might even get into a bottle of champagne, Doogie.
Yes, he's beginning to look very strong, very threatening there as the runners turn into Pollock Park. Through under the trees once again. So as they head through the trees in Pollock Estates.
Just looking at this part of the course, Peter, is this where the athletes from Bellahouston and Victoria Park and from all around Glasgow, do they train around here? Is this the training terrain?
Yeah, this is one of the areas where I train an awful lot, and a lot of the Bellahouston boys actually train around the golf courses here. We do sort of 20-mile laps around here. It's quite a nice area to train on, and it's all grass, which is important for a lot of athletes. It stops the jarring or the impact shock that you would get normally on the road.
Actually, while we look through the trees there, there's beautiful scenery that's really impressive, and the runners who are here from all around the world will be taking back the vision of Glasgow as a great place to be, a great looking place, and a great place to run a marathon, a great place to train. But there's all action happening down there, because I noticed that John Boys moved very, very quickly into 2nd place and started closing down on the leader, Andy Girling. So we've got a real race, and I think we're going to see some exciting changes over the next 20 minutes or so in the last 5 or 6 miles of this race.
Pollock Estate gifted to the city by the Sterling Maxwell family, and of course it's now the home of the Burrell Collection, which is now Scotland's main tourist attraction according to recent figures, and we'll be seeing Pollock House very shortly, once the residence of the Sterling Maxwells, an Adam building of tremendous distinction. It's open to the public.
Well, Doogie, there, as you were talking there, this is where the race is happening. John Boy's moving very, very well through from 3rd place. He started to feel strong, obviously. He's paced everything sensibly, and as we pass the historic sites, then it's all action down on the road there.
Yes, that's Pollock House there, Brendan. Beautiful building. And just down there by the gates we shall see the runners coming down very soon indeed, and this really could be a race between Girling and Boyce. Well, there's the race director's car, and we do in fact have a new leader. That's John Boyce from Bournemouth, the postman, 26-year-old. As Brendan said, did 2:17 in London earlier this year, and he's now overtaken Andy Girling of Glasgow University AC.
It's an interesting point here, because Andy Girling's been in the leading group all the way. He's even struck out for the lead, and it's a psychological warfare now, because John Boyce has paced himself. He's come steaming through. He's obviously getting stronger, and then the real crux of the matter here for Andy Girling is just to hang on there, not to panic, and not to go too quickly, but just to settle in your mind, because it's as much a mental thing as it is a physical thing, and not get overtaken too quickly, but reserve your energy and just don't lose your confidence, because John Boyce will be full of confidence now, having come from 3rd into 1st place, and Andy Girling will be having some doubts now, and there's a few yards there, and he's starting to glance over his shoulder behind him and see what's coming in 3rd, and that could be the crucial point of the race, because if he settles for 2nd, if Andy Girling settles for second, then he will be second, because John Boyes looks strong. As I said, his confidence will be on the up and up, and it would really have been a point there as they go through 21 miles in 1 hour 48 minutes, which is going to bring them home in around. It's going to bring them home in a course record if they keep going as they are. But I said that point there, John Boyes looking really strong. He said he was better than he was in London, where he ran 2:17. He said his training had gone better, and he certainly looks as though he's following his word. But Andy Girling is still not over for him yet. He's got to regroup his mental energies and start getting on with the race.
So it's Boyce and Girling, and I think Laurie Spence perhaps now back in third place. I think we just caught sight of him in the distance there, but the race at the moment between those two on their way through Pollock Park. Really is a wonderful estate.
Well, I don't know whether we're looking at third and fourth or fourth and fifth, but it's Callum Bark from Sunderland Harriers and David Robson from Elsick Harriers, both local lads in the northeast of England who are both good class athletes and are certainly running well here. Both trained by Alan Story, the marathon coach, who actually trained Mike McLeod when he won a silver medal in the Olympic Games. There's Alistair Douglas, who we saw running very well earlier, who's struggling. But no, we weren't looking at third and fourth. We were looking further down the field. So
that's Alan Wilson from Victoria Park, who had a Scottish record, junior age record last year in this race. Seems to be sort of finishing off quite slowly at the moment.
Well, there's the lead up. John Boyce from Bournemouth AC, just over the sleeping policeman, which I'm sure seem an awful lot higher to those runners than they look in our picture. You've got to watch out for those, Peter, I would imagine, a little bit, if you're just not concentrating.
Well, after 21 miles, you've got to concentrate getting over these. But it's interesting to note that in the past two marathons, the first man out of Pollock Estate has actually won the race. And it might be interesting to see if anybody challenges Boyce over the last 3 or 4 miles, because it is quite flat and it is quite hilly downhill towards the end. So it might be that he's pulled up a big enough lead to keep going over the last 3 miles.
He's certainly opening up a fair lead there, as we can see from the helicopter picture. And just while the leaders are making their way through and out of Pollock Park, let's go back once again to Anniesland, where still thousands of runners going through with only 7 or 8 miles completed. And this time it's the jester, William Docherty, from Irvine in Ayrshire. He's with Malcolm Wilson.
I'm still great in there. That's the main thing. Somebody said there was a big Jessie coming along the track. Oh, that's fine then. That'll probably be me. I think they've had a big jester. Aye, no problem. But I can't hate to do. I'm doing it for charity, so I mean I wouldn't dress up this way normally. How much you going to raise? About £50 for multiple sclerosis. So I'm quite pleased that somebody's getting something out that I'm not doing it in vain. I think I'll tell you, if this rain keeps up, you'll be running as if you're carrying a bag of bricks. I know, but nothing else you can do. You've got to keep going. Have you got the wee tinkly bells to keep you going? No, I'm fed up listening to bells for the rest of the day. Anyway, I hope to make you £50. And you make the marathon. Best of luck. See you on it.
William Docherty from Irvine, going well, and a long way ahead. It's still John Boyce, 26-year-old postman from Bournemouth, one of the England team. Scotland, remember, won the team prize last year. They had 3 men in the first 12.
Actually, Dougie, I spoke to the England team manager last night, Alan Story, and he got very enthusiastic and gave me a few notes. And we'll look at the one here for John Boyce. He said nothing particularly impressive in his background, but is a very likely winner of this race. Therefore, early references to him will make you look clever if he does win it.
Yes, you didn't miss the chance either, I notice. You gave him an early reference, and at the moment he looks as if he could well win it. Because, as Peter says, the first man out of Pollock Estates has won it in each of the last 2 years. There he goes, up and over the sleeping policeman. And I think he's now extending that lead over Andy Girling and looking very, very strong.
Well, he did it right. He didn't get involved in the early pace that Jim Brown was setting, but in amongst the trees and the path somewhere, that he's getting stronger as the race goes on, and he's mile split in the middle of the park there between about 19 and 20 miles. Must have been close to 5 minutes, probably under 5 minutes actually, because the rest of them weren't slowing down. So very impressive looking run, and you know, as a member of the England team, the rest of the England team will be following him. And it should be interesting to see what happens in the team race too, because don't forget there's an international team race occurring today, as well as the individual race between England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, Eire, Spain and Italy.
Well, they've now gone through 22 miles in 1:53:45. So the pace maintained, and back in the city centre there's George V Bridge, with the leaders now having completed 22 miles. They're just coming up to complete 13, so they're 9 miles behind the leaders. We're only just under halfway through this marathon. And while they pour out over George V Bridge, let's once again go back to Anniesland. A lot of activity around there, and Malcolm Wilson has picked himself out a couple of the twins who are running in this race.
Your lucky day. How are you feeling?
Fine, thank you.
I see you've got a low economic style here. No, the foot. The low economic style on the feet.
Yes, fine.
How are you feeling?
Great, fine. Very good.
Did you run it last year?
No, first time.
Have you done a marathon before?
No.
You're twins, aren't you?
No, just
You're
good
not?
friends.
You sure you're not twins?
No, not
Do you look like twins? There's a police car behind you. You have to hurry up.
Who are you?
BBC television. There's the camera up there, you see? You've got to run straight into the camera.
Hello, Granny.
You'll have to kid on that you can put on a finishing spot here.
Oh, I see.
Best of luck. There's only 19 miles to go.
Thank you.
Well, they may not be twins, but they've got the same taste in running gear anyway, that's for sure. Houston McRae and Doreen Gloss. John Boyce still leading and looking very good indeed as he comes out of the estate, heading now through Pollock Shields, and a very likely winner. Meanwhile, a couple of miles behind him, and there are some of the spectators in Pollock. The herd of Highland cattle, although they're not actually known as a herd when you have Highland cattle, and the male cows have the horns coming round in front. The female cows go up in the air, I'm assured, so that would allow you to identify the cows. It's amazing the things you learn when you're doing your preparation for something like the Glasgow Marathon, isn't it?
I was just going to say, your depth of knowledge is astounding.
It's very kind of you to say so, Brandon. So, yeah, we can have a look at them and feed them carrots later. That's James Drugan from Glasgow going through. He's running his first marathon and heading for a very good time indeed. He predicted 3 hours 40. I think he's going to beat that.
Can I just put in there, that's actually not him. He must have used his different name. He's actually ran about 2:25, so he's doing well.
Having seen the leaders and those going through Pollock Estate at 22 miles, way back, still having completed only 12 miles, those vast numbers of runners coming along the Rummelaw, the Kingston Bridge there in the background.
We were talking last night about the, the effect this has on the business in town, because all the hotels were full. and a lot of the athletes brought their fans up, and some of the restaurants and pubs were full of visitors last night. And I was talking to Sandy Greaves last night, one of the leading sports outfitters around the place, and he says they had between 2,000 and 3,000 of these people in his shop yesterday, so he thanks the Glasgow Marathon for the extra business.
It's a great thing for commercial life in the city as well, obviously. Tremendous numbers of visitors here to run, here to spectate. And all of those runners you see there haven't yet reached halfway. And as always, the wheelchair contestants getting tremendous support from the crowds back at Annie's Land in particular, and Dee Hepburn has one of them with her now.
You're doing very well for the 7 mile, Mike.
Aye. I was getting stuck on the hills.
Have you got any other friends in the race?
I've got Stephen Dancy from the Mid-Coast House in Venice.
And do you know how he's doing?
I don't know.
Well, I'm sure you're going to do very well.
Thanks very much.
What's your name?
Jason McCrae.
And where is it you come from?
In Venice.
Oh, you're coming off a long way. You're getting it. Are you enjoying it?
Aye.
Right, well, I'll go and let you get on with it then, okay?
Right.
See you later.
Aye.
Houston McRae, just 19 from Inverness, with the sweeper bus in close proximity. The bus, of course, following all the runners around in case of runners who have to pull out or become injured. Need a lift back to the finishing line in Glasgow Green. And that finishing line is now not very far away for the race leader, John Boyce from Bournemouth. Now very much into the closing stretch. John Boyce now in St Andrews Drive. It's a long road which runs right through the Pollock Shields area of the city. And there's that long stretch which will take him back in towards the city. The M8's over there on the left of the picture. Again, an indication of just how much greenery there is around this city of ours. Boys now having completed 23 miles or so. And as we can see behind him, he's still fairly well clear of, I think it's still Andy Girling in second place. And Laurie Spence lying third, so Scotland second and third.
Sorry, Dougie, you said Scotland second and third. It's England first and second. Andy Girling's living in Scotland, and he's an Englishman, actually.
Are we going to argue about that, are we? Another watering station as they head along St Andrews Drive. And John Boyce happy to ignore it. There's the pedestrian bridge. Encouragement even from there. They'll know that this is the leading man. Let me just ask you two gentlemen whether you think it'll stay that way, Boyce, Girling and Spence. Brendan, firstly.
Well, Peter was saying that whoever comes out of the estate first, the Pollock estate, has won the race for the last for the other years, and I'm sure, to me, it looks like we're going to see the same again, because John Boyce has looked very strong, but you can never tell. There's several miles to go in a marathon, and if your legs run out of the essential glycogen that provides the energy to the muscles to do the work, then who knows. But to me, if I had to bet on the thing, you probably wouldn't get a bet at this point in the race up here in Scotland, but I would think that this man's going to win the race. He's looking very, very strong, but a lot of things can happen. Andy Girling in second place, who's run an extremely good race and has probably just got over the shock of being overtaken, has probably regathered his composure and is probably running as hard as he can now. And in third place, Laurie Spence, who promises a lot in the marathon. This is, I think I'm right in saying it's only his second marathon. His last one was a bit of a disaster, but this one's looking really, really promising. But you can never say it's all over in a marathon.
Yeah, he's looking very, very good, and from now on it's sort of plain sailing. He should be feeling quite good. We'll be coming into the crowds soon, so that'll give him a wee lift. But Andy Gilling's actually sort of recouped himself, and he seems to be quite relaxed now. But whether he catches John, very much doubt.
So they go through 24 miles and over the 2-hour mark now, 2 hours 3 minutes. And back on the Brumalop, and what is now happily a quite bright morning, no more rain. Still they come along heading towards the halfway stage. And not too long from now we'll be seeing John Boys coming over King George V Bridge. Meanwhile, there is a lot of Bellahouston vests in evidence there. These again all good club runners, all heading for good times. They're back at the 21-mile mark in Pollock Park. Good encouragement again from the crowds. They've all turned out, despite the rain showers, applauding these runners through. And so far, everyone looking pretty comfortable, pretty happy. No doubt enjoying the change of scenery as they come through under the trees there. And that could well be the leading lady having just gone through there, Lorna Irvin, housewife from Dumfriesshire. There's Clyde Place once again from the helicopter, and over to the right of the picture, just alongside the river, you can see those who have just crossed King George V Bridge for the first time, heading out along Clyde Place, past the tanker moored alongside, and heading out just passing the 13-mile mark. And further over, directly underneath, there is the leader, John Boys, heading for the bridge now for the second time.
Well, we got a split time for John Boys at 24 miles, 2 hours, 3 minutes and 23 seconds, which if he just continues this pace, he's going to hack chunks off the record for this course. I think the conditions this time are better than they've been before. I think the coolness and the dampness has certainly helped, because he's not going to have any problems from blisters or from dehydration. But he's still looking strong, and he could go close to 2 hours, 16 minutes, which I'm sure that if Peter had been fit to join him in this race, we'd have had 2 athletes coming down that road.
Yeah, well, I think I'll have to come out of retirement. Can't see all these English guys winning their own races.
Brendan Foster very conscious that he's outnumbered here, remaining quiet for the moment. The leading lady, incidentally, who we did see going through Pollock, is Lorna Irving, who's from Langham. She took up running only last year, but she's already won a considerable number of half marathons and shorter road races. She's only actually run 2 marathons. She'd had a sub 3 hour run in the Windermere event last October after only 4 months training. And in London this year, she did 2:44.15. So it's a very good run indeed for Lorna, and she looks at the moment to be leading the women's race. Now John Boy's just beginning to look a little bit troubled now, Brendan, isn't he?
Yeah, he's beginning to show the signs of exertion. I mean, he ran very quickly from about 19 miles to about 22, 23 miles. He was running much faster than anyone around, and I think he is showing some strain. But if I remember rightly, last year at one point here, we thought Peter was struggling for maybe about 100 yards.
It is quite a hard stretch, actually. But as soon as he looks quite all right, and I think as soon as he hits George V Bridge, I don't think he should have much problem, because it's actually quite quiet up to this point. But as soon as you hit the bridge, you feel the crowd encouraging you, and I'm sure they'll give him all the encouragement he needs to get over the last mile and a half. Well,
there is the bridge. Crowds thronging it. Leader still a little bit short of that bridge, but runners still heading out and over to the south side. Back in the Pollock Park area, still coming through, still getting great encouragement. They're all good runners, good club athletes, all looking comfortable, all running, I would imagine, very close to their predicted time. 1:93 there, Anthony McCall from Dunbartonshire. He's 42, he's aiming for 2.5 hours, and he'll not be far short of that. And there's the leader heading for George V Bridge, John Boyce, Bournemouth AC.
Interesting there, he's getting a great reception from the runners who've still got 13 miles to go. They're clapping, they're slowing down to clap for him. I mean, he deserves it, he's run very well. He's getting a great hand from the supporters, and he's starting to look more as though he's heading for the line. I mean, he's relaxed a little now, maybe slightly downhill there, but he knows he's within sight of the finish. And he's heading towards his first major victory of any description, and he'll be going through his mind, you've got to keep going. You know, you might acknowledge the crowds, but you've got to keep pushing, because if you don't, they'll start coming at you from behind. And so it's the fantasy of pushing yourself to the end and imagining someone coming up behind you, because that's the only thing that can drive you on in the later stages of an event like this, because it doesn't matter where you're finishing, no matter how strong you feel, there's a certain element of tiredness in those legs, and you can see that when he slips under that bridge there, you can see he's still driving himself, but he's trained a long time for this. He's worked very, very hard over the years. He's run 7 marathons, and he hasn't won one yet. And I think he's got a lot of potential for the future. Very, very good athlete.
It's a lovely sign on the back of the police motorcycle there. Follow me. Well, they're all doing exactly that. John Boyce ahead of the rest as they head along the Clyde Walkway, the suspension bridge. Lovely pictures again of that very attractive part of the riverside, through Custom House Quay Gardens, past the bandstand there. That's where there's entertainment laid on summer afternoons. Andy Girling now quite a long way behind. You can see in the distance there, heading under the bridge, John Boyce. That's quite a lot to make up in what is now only the last 1,000 yards or so. John Boyce now beginning to look very much like the winner of this 1984 Scots Porridge Marathon.
As I said, I was talking to him last night, and this is the only bit of the course he looked at, the bit along the river. He said it would be quite nice. He went out for a little jog, a couple of miles last night with his wife along here, because she runs a bit too, and he said, that'll do for me. I know what the last mile looks like. And he said, I'll find out what the other 25 mile looks like tomorrow.
Well, they're just passing the famous old steamship there, the Carrick. And he was now heading through towards the park gates. And this is where he really will be aware of the crowds. Huge crowds expected in Glasgow Green. The Charathon going on there, remember. The Rotary Club of Glasgow having organised a massive fundraising event. And there'll be huge crowds. They'll have been entertained there since very early on this morning. And they'll now have been told via the PA announcer in the park that the leader is approaching the gates. And John Boyce from Bournemouth looks like making it a triumph for England. Grimacing, fighting on, but he must know that he's got a very handy lead over Girling. I don't think he can be caught now. That's the gate. He's got the long, slightly uphill run through the trees, the right turn at the top of that incline. That's the turn.
And he is now into the park.
Can you remember this part of the race last year, Peter?
Oh yes, very, very vivid. It's one of the great finishes of any marathon that I've ever run on. Beautiful trees, the crowds are thick, he'll just be feeling absolutely fantastic at the moment.
And if my watch is running right, he's going to be very, very close to that record. I think he's going to beat the record. He's going to run, I think, under 2 hours 16, which would be a very respectable time, because this is not an easy course. It's geographically quite tough. The weather conditions this morning have been okay. They haven't been great for marathon running, but at least it hasn't been hot. We've had a good competitive race, and he's run very well, and he came here to run well. He came here to represent England for his first time ever, and what a way to start his international career. And as we watch him there, he knows what time he's running. He's got his running watch there. He's just checked it. He's coming up to a check mark. He knows he's coming up to the 26-mile mark, so there's at least 385 yards to go, and he's looking closely there. I think he's going to decide, do I push it all the way to the finish and do a sprint, or do I just coast along? But he's heading for a personal best time, and in his first international for England, you can't do any better than that.
Well, there's the marker on the lamppost on the right of the picture, 26 miles, 385 yards to go, and this must be a new course record. The course record's 2 hours 16 minutes from 2 years ago, just over 16 minutes, and it looks as if John Boyce from Bournemouth, and he is trying to summon up a sprint, forcing those tired legs into a sprint and getting a tremendous response from the crowd here in Glasgow Green. What a tremendous effort over those last few aching yards. It's John Boyce from Bournemouth AC who's going to win the Scots Porridge Marathon 1984 through the tape. Absolutely delighted. It's a new record. He beat the 2 hour 15 minutes barrier, and that is a tremendous run. And Andy Girling in second place. Good run too. He was out in front from early on. He was overtaken by Boyce just as they came round from Barhead Road. He makes his final turn. This will be a very good time as well for Girling, and he'll certainly take second prize.
An excellent run by Andy Girling. He made his bid to try and win the race, and then he gathered his momentum again and reserved himself, and he's coming through here. A very, very good run in second place. 2 hours 15 minutes and 39 seconds. He'll be delighted with that. And in third place, Laurie Spence. I must say that I've always thought Laurie was a very good athlete, and the last time he ran a marathon here, he had to walk the last 6 miles, and he came home in 2 hours 42 when he fancied himself to win the thing. So Laurie Spence coming through in third place, obviously a personal best time and a much deserved run of 2 hours, just over 2 hours 16 minutes. He'll be happy with that, and that's a good step in the right direction for Laurie Spence. I think we might see him feature in the Commonwealth Games trials for Scotland for 1986. So good class running. And Jim Dingwall, who we saw last night, he said I can run anything between 2 hours 16 and 2 hours 23. And Callum Bark there from the northeast of England, an excellent run. I'm pretty sure he's in fourth place, and in fifth place behind him Jim Dingwall. Good run by Callum Bark, 2 hours 16. The Sunderland Harriers, who come up here occasionally, have done very well. And just behind him in fifth place is I'm pretty sure it's Jim Dingwall, 2 hours 16. He said he could run anything between 2:16 and 2:23. He had a couple of pints of beer last night, but he said that was just to relax him because he runs better after a few pints of beer.
Well, that's the first four men have all broken the old course record, Brendan.
David Robson there from Elsick Harriers.
That's just a remarkable run there by Andy Daly, who was in a car accident in Spain in June there, and he was off 2 weeks with a compound fracture. And that's a remarkable run. He's run a PB by almost 2 minutes. Yeah, Alan Wilson, who's only 20 years old, he's obviously broken his junior record, and he's had a really good run as well.
Well, a tremendous finish to this marathon. Laurie Spence, incidentally, will win the Anthony Finlay Memorial Quake as the first Scotsman home, assuming that Andy Girling won't be eligible, although he's an adopted Scot studying at Glasgow University. He finished second, but the first Scot home, Laurie Spence, in third place. And there's Don McGregor and Jim Brown in front. Jim made the break very early on. We felt perhaps he'd gone too soon, too quickly. So it's proved. He's certainly going to finish in the first 20 though, and Don McGregor, this incredible 45-year-old, 7th in the 1972 marathon, and he still runs to within seconds of the time he ran that afternoon in Munich, and that's absolutely tremendous. Teacher of German at Madras College in Fife, runs for Fife AC. That distinctive running style with the head over on one side, and once again a tremendous run by McGregor. Jim Brown just behind him.
Actually, Dougie, I think I can see that the lad from Annan, James Walker, he said he was going to run 3 hours 15, and I've got 2 hours 18 on my watch, so he's nearly an hour faster than he predicted. Must be the run of the day.
Absolutely, he'll be absolutely thrilled.
Actually, Don's a great inspiration to us older athletes. He keeps going, and as you said, he keeps running almost as fast as he ever ran before, and that's a good thing. The marathon is becoming an event where you can keep going for a few extra years, and it's a great run by Don McGregor. 2 hours 18 minutes, 2:19, and Jim Brown just behind him. I think Jim will run very well at the marathon when he learns to take the first 6 miles a little more comfortably, and he learns to become less aggressive. And I think coming in just over 2 hours 19 is
we've got Tony Coyne there, who took 16 minutes off his PB last year, and that's him took another 2 minutes off this year.
And just behind him, James Walker, who we watched from Annan, who was predicting 3 hours 15, actually ran 2 hours 19.
Murray McNaught from Fife AC just coming in there, and as all those runners come to the end of their 26-mile run, still back along the Brumallow and at George V Bridge, those runners won't even be aware that some of their number can finally stop running. Some of them, as you can see, already reduced to a walk, and that's going to make it a very long morning and indeed afternoon for them, because they're not even halfway yet.
Can we just try and give that unofficial
Absolutely, Brendan, if you've got the list there, yeah.
John Boyce first, 2 hours 14 minutes 55 seconds. Girling in second place, 2 hours 15, and Laurie Spence 2 hours 16, which is a fantastic run when you consider his first event was 2:42. Callum Bark from Sunderland Harriers, 2:16.33 in fourth place. Jim Dingwall, 2:16.44 in fifth place, and David Robson from Elsick Harriers, Mick McLeod's athletic club, 2 hours 16.57. So I think that overall that's an excellent step forward. All of those people, well, 5 of them at least, beat the course record from last time, and I think the conditions and the competitive race contributed very much to that.